I've had an interest over the past, or just recently, in some World War II stories. And watched the movie yesterday, fascinating stories, things that I'd never heard of before. And there's another story that's come to my attention, and I'd actually heard about it before, but I'd never really read through the details and understood the story. I'm going to share that story with you today. It's a powerful one, and it gripped me whenever I heard this phrase. A guy said, after hearing about Pearl Harbor, so December 7th, 1941, and in that moment of hearing about Pearl Harbor being bombed, his words were, Japan is going to pay for this. His name was Jacob DeShazer. And Jacob DeShazer was a pilot, and at that time he was on kitchen duty, and not at Pearl Harbor, but after that happened, he decided he was going to get involved, and he wanted to be a part of seeking vengeance for the United States for what Japan did at Pearl Harbor. So he volunteered for a raid that was so secret that no one knew was going to happen, and it was called the Doolittle Raid. Perhaps you've heard of it. It was when 16 bombers took off of an aircraft carrier. It was very difficult to do, but they managed to figure out how they could get close enough with the aircraft carrier. 16 bombers took off, and they bombed Japan. This wasn't Hiroshima. This wasn't the atom bomb. This was just in retaliation for Pearl Harbor, happened in I think it was 1942, right after Pearl Harbor or soon after that. And so he was one of the bombardiers. Took off, hit his target. On his way back, he ran out of fuel, and they had to land in occupied China. Japan was occupying parts of China at that time, and they landed in Japanese-occupied China. He was captured along with others that were with him, and he spent the next 3 years and 10 months in a Japanese cell. During that time, 3 of those that were on his flight with him were executed quickly. Soon after that, they got caught. A 4th one died of starvation, and he was the last one left for 3 years and 10 months. It was the last place on earth, 3 years and 4 months, the last place on earth that he wanted to be. A place that he had never planned. He's a starving prisoner in a cell that he would never choose. There's another story that we come to in Acts as we've looked at Acts, and we're actually coming to the very end. So you're at the second to the last sermon in Acts. Next week, if you show up, you'll be there for the last one. Some of you have been here for a long time, and you've seen us all the way through. We've been in Acts for 2 years because we go verse by verse through this book. And we've come off of it and done a series here or there, but we've been faithfully going through Acts. It's been so fascinating because you get to stories like this one, and suddenly in it you see a man go through things that we could only imagine, but connect with the stories that we go through. And Paul is that guy. He has gone through things that blow your mind. But how he's gone through it has been the most fascinating thing. And through his example, we see how Christians get through the things that we go through too. And he, like DeShazer, ends up shipwrecked on an island in a place that he had never planned to be. And in Acts 27, a couple of weeks ago, we saw that his ship was carrying him to Rome. He's a prisoner. And it goes through 2 weeks of a hurricane that just completely wipes out their ship. The amazing part is that God makes sure that all 276 on board make it to this island. Now, they make it clinging onto boards and swimming for their lives, but no one is lost because of the promises of God that he told Paul. But they're shipwrecked, they're cold, they're soaking. It's not in their plan. The title of my sermon today is The Place you never planned. If you've ever landed somewhere that you did not want to be, maybe it was a job, maybe it's a city, maybe it's a season that you didn't end up or decide, a setback, a diagnosis, and you wonder, what could God possibly be doing? And how could he get you through this? Well, you're in the right place today. Because now we come to Acts 28, and God shows us how he can take someone who's willing to listen, willing to trust the Lord, into a place that he's never planned to be and actually end up blessing the entire place. Do you know that not only could God pull you through what you're going through, but in the end, it could be the blessing that you're looking for in your life? That's incredible. It's possible. How do you survive and even bless the place that you never planned to be? Here's the first thing you got to do. You're going to gather the sticks. Gather the sticks. I know that may sound odd when you first hear it, but we're going to see how Paul gathered the sticks where he was. Let's look at verse 1 of Acts 28. After, this is Luke writing, remember, and Luke is part of the group. After we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. Malta. When we lived in England, lots of people would do vacations in Malta. It was the place to be, the place to go. Well, not in Paul's day. It was not where you wanted to be. The native people, he says in verse 2, showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all, because it had begun to rain and was cold. When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, ... Wait there for a moment. He gathers a bunch of sticks and put them on the fire. But notice what it says at the beginning. Luke says after they were brought into safety. Luke, this author of Acts, purposely chooses a phrase that makes it clear that they were brought into Malta. They were brought through to where they had never planned to be. That's wild. God bringing you through something or to a place you had never planned on purpose. It's a word he uses here, he uses in other places where he's rescued from death, or even in places where people were healed of diseases, and he uses that same phrase, all the while giving God credit for it. They did not save themselves. God brought them through. Why? Because he had promised to bring them through. And where did God bring them? An island. Now, old Phoenician sailors named this island. And Malta actually means refuge. I think that's pretty cool. God brought them to a place of refuge. He knew what he was doing. He knew what was happening in the storm, and he knew where they would land, and he knew why they needed to be there, and we're about to see and understand it as well. It was bigger than the problems that they were going through, just like your life. Just like the place that you never planned to be, there's a bigger story that God is doing through it all. God is good. All the time. He brings them to refuge. Nothing random here. The locals were called barbarians. In the Greek text, it's actually the word barbarians. Now, we find that offensive nowadays, but it wasn't then. It was a word meaning those that did not speak Greek or Latin. They were barbarians. They couldn't speak Greek or Latin. Strangers, foreigners. But what did these guys do? It says here that they showed extraordinary, it says unusual, also translated extraordinary kindness. That phrase is the same phrase you would use for showing people love beyond what they deserved. Love that went beyond. Now think about it. You've got the natives there. 276 people is a lot of people that suddenly rock up on your shore, and now you make a fire and you are kind to them. You don't push them away. You don't say, oh no, now we got to feed these guys. There's no ship. What do they bring? They bring nothing to us. They get unusual kindness because God has a bigger story in mind. Then comes this detail so small that you might just pass it. Paul gathers sticks to lay on the fire. Paul is an apostle. He's an apostle. This is at the end of his life. He's already planted multiple churches all around the known world at that time. He's a big deal. He's a big guy. In fact, all the big people that you know, all the superstars that you know in your life on TV, and all the pastors that you watch and like and download all their sermons, they're getting all of it from this dude. He was the first that took what Jesus had and he pinned it down and he wrote it, and we read about it. He wrote most of the New Testament. He's a big deal. And not only that, he's this prisoner. So he's a prisoner unjustly, and he could be sitting back and be like, hey guys, all because of me, I got you through that storm. All because of me, I am the reason you're okay, and I'm going to help you get to Rome, and I'm God's favorite. So I need you to build a fire for me. You can do that, can't you? A fire. Let me tell you, most apostolic, great people of God nowadays would say, hey, I did my time. I'm putting my feet up. I need a few of you minions now. Come on. I once heard somebody who had really made it, and I won't mention their name, who'd really made it say, hey, you don't understand. I can do all these things, and they were talking about the limo they drive in, because I paid my dues. You weren't there whenever my ministry was small and it was really hard, but now it's great, and I get to enjoy the fruit of it. That was not Paul. Paul didn't do that. Paul didn't do that. Now, if one of you gives me a limo, I would be tempted. It would be very, very hard. I would have to really resist. I wouldn't want to be in a limo. Now, Ko would want to be in a limo. We hear about limos all the time. I wouldn't want to be in a limo. But Paul doesn't put his feet up. He gathers sticks. He does this humiliating, humbling thing. He's just gathering sticks. Isn't that a beautiful picture? When I read that, I was like, wait a minute, Paul's gathering sticks. He doesn't say, do you know who I am? He doesn't say, hey, listen, nowadays, we may even say, I'm an American. Do you know the trouble you're putting me through? I actually heard someone who was half drunk trying to get on an airplane in Paris. And he said, do you know who I am? I'm an American. I was like, oh gosh. That's the quickest way to say, you're not getting on this plane today, buddy. Lowliest job on the beach. There is no elitism in Paul since the road to Damascus. That's where blessing begins. Not with a platform, with a bundle of sticks. If you come back to the DeShazer, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, the DeShazer story of him in this Japanese cell. This proud airman vowed that Japan would pay for what they did. Now he is stripped of everything: rank, his freedom, his strength, his dignity, and he finds himself at the hands of the very people who were going to pay. Guess who's paying now? He's paying for it. He was brought as low as a man can go. And it was in this lowest place, not on a stage, but in this lowest place that you're about to see how God would use this man in mighty ways. But why? You'll see in a moment how he humbles himself, and the same as Paul does in that rain that day. He humbles himself to say, how do I serve here? Not who serves me, how do I serve? And everything changes. And he gets all in with a bundle of sticks. He gets all in where he's at, even though he doesn't want to be at that place. Jim Elliot was a missionary, and many of us know his story, and he reached out to unreached people groups in Ecuador and lost his life. And they took his life, but his journal, we have writings of it, and he inspired a whole generation and still inspiring many people. And he said this: wherever you are, be all there. Live to the hilt every situation you believe to be the will of God. Be all there. Jim Elliot was all there. He was all in. He lost his life because of it, but it's an incredible story of salvation that came to that whole village eventually through his wife, Elizabeth Elliot. Similarly, DeShazer, all in. We'll see his story in a moment. But I want you to understand, Paul did not plan that trip to Malta, but he's picking up sticks. He's giving it his everything from the moment he's there. And you're going to see how God does incredible things through him. Are you all in? You know, it's really easy to say that when things are going really well. It's easy to say that when you're in the place that you plan to be. And it was like, hey, everything's just working out and I am all in. Very hard to say it whenever you end up shipwrecked on an island and you're like, I am, okay, not sure I'm all in. It's hard when you're going through those situations. What would it look like for you to start gathering sticks in the situation that you're in right now? What could gathering sticks and being all in look like for you? You know, a stick is a small thing. It's the bend down in the rain kind of thing to pick up a stick. It's a humbling move. A stick doesn't look like much. Nobody claps for collecting sticks. In fact, whenever we go camping and I ask my children, guys, we're going to build a fire, let's all go gather sticks. Suddenly, I'm talking to no one. I don't know where they went. Nobody wants to gather a stick, and it's Dad out there gathering the sticks. It's not something that you enjoy doing. But you know what a bundle of sticks does? It brings the warmth that you need. It brings that fire that those people on Malta were bringing to all those strangers. It's the small unseen work that adds up to warmth for somebody else. It's that text that you send. Nobody else knows you send, but it's that text that you send when you know you need to send it. It's you sticking around when everybody's gone to set up and take down a chair, put it away. Nobody claps for that, but it's you gathering sticks. It's you being there when a neighbor goes through a difficult time and saying, hey, I'll sit with your kids if you need to go to the hospital. It's you cooking a meal, learning a name, checking in on people. That's the gathering the sticks. You have to stop waiting for an assignment that's worthy of you. Paul didn't wait for the pulpit on Malta. He reached for the firewood. So you pick up the sticks. You pick up the sticks, and the platform may never come. There's no promise of a platform, but there's a promise of blessing whenever you pick up the sticks. What does your stick look like? What would it look like this week? What would one humble, unglamorous thing this week look like if you did it unto the Lord? That's where God lights the fire. So, you've been in a place where you never wanted to be, you're going to become a blessing by gathering some sticks. But second, you're going to grip the promise, because there's a promise in your life and over your life, and you need to find out what that is. You see it in Paul's life here. Verse 3, remember, he gathers the sticks, he puts them in a fire. Now look what happens, verse 3. A viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, no doubt, this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live. He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Wow. What a switch. What a turnaround. The islanders read the snake attack as a verdict from a god. Literally a god. In fact, they say justice has come to not let him live. That's a capital J. Justice was one of the names of their gods. And justice, they saw, came and bit him. And so therefore, he must be a murderer. That's justice. He escaped death, but death came to get him anyway. Case closed. This man is cursed. Notice a crowd will write your obituary real fast. real fast. 1 minute, Paul is a murderer getting what he deserves. A few minutes later, he doesn't drop dead. Same crowd decides he's a god. He's a god. Murderer to deity in one paragraph. Isn't that so true? The opinion of the crowd is a weather vane, people. Every little gust swings it this way, swings it that way, condemns you and worships you in the same afternoon. You know this crowd. It's the comment section that loves you on Monday and then condemns you on Friday. It's the room that praises your work to your face and then picks it apart when you leave the room. It's the friend group that's warm until you disappoint them once. They're suddenly not warm anymore. The applause and the accusation, they come from the same mouth. We know this. And did you know if you live for the one, you will get bitten by the other? It will come and get you. The applause or the accusation, neither of them are meant to be lived for. It'll hurt you. If you chase the crowd's worship, then you hand them the power to write your death sentence. The higher they lift you, the more you have to fall. That's the truth. The more you have to fall. And you know what? It'll never be enough. The applause will never be enough. The amount of people, your business will never be big enough if you decide to live for how big it gets. Your friendship group will never be good enough if you decide to live for all of their opinions and not the Lord's above theirs. It'll never be enough. It can never be enough. Even in our church, it'll never be enough. If we can't do the Lord's will and what He wants us to do for 10, we won't be able to do it for 1,000 or for 100,000. Even if you get to 100,000, it won't be the Lord's doing because you live for the crowd. It'll kill you in the end. It does, and it's done many, many ministers. But Paul won't play this game. While the venom is still in his hand, while the verdict still hangs over his life, he shakes it off and then goes back to warming himself at the fire. I mean, I love it. I can just imagine how casual he is. He's like, oh, man, okay, shake that off, fire, burn it. And then he's like, oh, that was hectic. What did I miss? Did I miss something? Why are you guys looking at me like that? They're all like, let's just watch him. There's 276 people around that fire. That's without the locals. How many people are there? I imagine all the locals came out to see. I imagine there's about 500 people there, and they're all like, let's just watch this guy drop dead. Come on, guys. He's about to drop dead any minute. He's like, guys, did anyone bring the marshmallows? I was just thinking we could carry on with the fire if you guys don't mind. He doesn't drop dead. And suddenly the crowd turns. It says here that their opinion changed because the snake did not kill him. Paul's opinion never changed. Paul didn't care what they thought. You know why? Because he had a promise over his life that had gripped him so much that not even a snake and a venom running through his veins could worry him. Because God had said, you will stand before Caesar. And he's thinking, I'm not before Caesar, so I'm not dead, and I won't be dead now. I'm not dying on this island. He was so gripped by the promise of God that the crowd's opinion did not matter. Are you gripped by the promises of God, by His word over you more than the crowd's word? Are you gripped by that? Is your identity settled in what the Lord says of you and whose you are and His declaration over your life? So much so that you know, no matter what the crowd does, I'm at peace. I know who I am. Doesn't matter if I've been brought shipwrecked to the place I am now. I have my identity in the Lord, and I'm going to get through this. And as I get through it, I'm going to bless people too. I'm going to bless while I'm here. Now, that's the kind of life I want to live. That's the kind of person I want to be. When your identity is anchored in what God has said over you, the crowd loses its grip on you. Their praise cannot inflate you, and their scorn cannot sink you, because you already know whose you are. You come back to this Japanese prison cell. The venom in DeShazer's story was not a snake's venom. The venom in his story was his hatred. That's what was eating him up. 3 of his fellow raiders shot dead before him. The other one starved to death. DeShazer spent those 34 of those 40 months, that is 2 years and 10 months out of the 3 years and 4 months, in solitary confinement. That is incredibly difficult to survive. Half starved, on his own, and by his own account, he said he was eaten up with bitterness. That poison was killing him from the inside. Then he did something desperate. He begged the guards for a Bible over and over again. Finally, in May 1944, a guard handed him a Bible and said, "You've got 3 weeks with this." In those 3 weeks, he devoured that Bible. And when he got to Romans 10, he baptized himself with the trickle of water through his thing, and he gave his life to Jesus. And he got saved in that prison. He still had 1 year to go before he would finally get free. The hatred that had its fangs in him, he shook it off with the fire of salvation that came upon him. And he walked out of that conversion still in chains, but free to love the very people who were torturing him. The bite that you're enduring may be the very thing you have to go through to become the blessing that God needs you to be. You have to go through it sometimes to be the blessing. And we don't want to hear that. We want to hear that God can shape us without any difficulty, that God can use us, and our story will be, it was just rose petals my whole life. It was just aromatherapy life. That's what we want, the aromatherapy Christian life. And I just sailed through it, and I did my nails, and I did my, sorry. But this is the life we think is the good life, the Christian life. No, that's not the good life. The good life is getting through a bite and still coming out through the other end alive and ready to be the blessing. That's the life we're looking for. Offense is often what carries us or gets to us. That's the stuff that comes through our veins. You know, planting a church has not been easy. And I love that we have incredible people that make it look easy. We do. We got teams within teams now, and even with Ken on staff. I mean, he makes it look easy. I look at him, I think, how are you doing this so easy? He's so good at what he does. But it's not easy. You know why it's not easy? Because we've got opinions, just like this crowd. We have the same thing all the time. And we have opinions, and when you're in the ministry, you got people that wish that you were more like this, and then those other people will come and say, why are you so much like this? Can't you be more like this? And you're just constantly like, I don't know. If I please you, I don't please them. And you have to listen to the Lord and do what he's asking you to do. And the crowd doesn't like it. And the very crowd that will come and say, we're with you to the end, will turn on you in a moment. And we've had that. And at times, you don't even know why. And you can't even put your finger on it. You don't understand it. And somehow that offense has crept in on that side of their side. And you don't even realize you've offended them. You have no idea. But you know what happens? Then you start to get your back up. Then you start to get offended. And it's like, how dare you? Oh, yeah? I'll tell you. And you never tell them because, you know, you're the pastor of the church. You're not allowed to tell them. You got to just be like, okay, we love you. You can't just... Not allowed to do that. But inside, that bitterness can come. And without you knowing it, you have settled. What's happened is that you've weathered the criticism, but then you fell off the horse on the other side by allowing it to define your relationship with God or with others, and you allow something to come in. That happens in church. I can only imagine it happens at your work. It happens with your family. It happens to every single one of us. We go through things that if we allow that venom to keep stirring in our hearts, it will get us. But you know what? God's given you a promise, just like he's given me a promise. And there's days when I got to look and say, wait, my promise is not on someone else agreeing with what I'm doing or even liking me. My promise is that the Lord has said, I'm with you, and this is what we're doing. Okay, I'm realigning. I'm getting back to here. What are you saying, Jesus? Am I being faithful with what you've gone? Now I can release all the comment section, the crowd. I can release them. I can say, you know what? God's got good things for you too. You need to go find them. But God's told us this, and this is where we're going. What's God said to you? I already know some of those promises. You know, God said he's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. God said he's always going to be with you. He's pulling you through. There's another in the fire. We know those kind of songs. God's with you. I already know he's got all those promises. But you may have some specific promises in your life that you've forgotten about, and you got to let them grip you again and say, no, God said this. We're going to do this. We're going. Kids, come together. We're going to talk about some promises that God spoke over our family, and this is who we are, and this is where we're going. You got to get back to those promises. Let them grip you. It gripped Paul. You need to come back, maybe even this week. Listen, people have probably written your obituary for you already, much sooner than you would ever expect. It's like, it's wild how they'll do that. You got to let that go and come to what God has said and what he's written in your life and over your life and say, what's the promises? Bring them out. Pull them like whenever you go to create something and you have to go to the layer section and you bring it to the front. Some of you have put and when you make a photograph, you with me? Sorry, my mind just went there. It made sense to me when I started it. And you're in Canva. Now I'm tracking with you. You're in Canva. And you're like, my text is behind my picture. And you click on the picture, you right-click it, and it says layer. And suddenly you put it in the background, and you're like, oh, there's the text. Some of you need to go back to those promises and say, oh, there they are. And put the picture of that crowd, just say, putting you in the back. In fact, take it off the canvas, and it kind of disappears. It's like, oh, that's even better. Oh, yeah, there it is. That's what you need to do in your life. Gather the sticks, grip the promise again. And then, if you're in the place you never planned to be, get ready to give blessing away. There's blessing still to give away. Give it away. Give it away. Give the blessing away to others. Verse 7. Now in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. That's the main guy on the island. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. In England, we used to say dysentery. It's not dysentery. We're in America. Dysentery. No, you guys are going to laugh. Pause for a second. I literally had to go listen to the audio recording to figure out how we say that word because I kept saying dysentery. And I was like, I'm sure we don't say dysentery in America. So I had to find an American version of the Bible, and he corrected me. It's dysentery. Okay. It's dysentery. It's not dysentery. Dysentery. And Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, he healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. Wow, Paul, come on, man. They also honored us greatly, and when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. They got everything back and more. Wow, that's how good God can be in the place that you never wanted to be. Publius is called the chief man. He's literally the first on the island. They found actual carved stones in Malta with that title on it. This is a real title. The first on the island, the chief man, most important one. And he gives favor to Paul. He's in a crisis. His father got dysentery. Malta was infamous, by the way, for the fever that it carried through the goat's milk in that place. That's why it was happening all the time on the island. Paul goes and prays, lays his hands on this old man, and God heals him. Then the floodgates open, and everybody who had any diseases wants to come and get healed. In fact, Luke uses the tense that it was ongoing. They kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. Suddenly, Paul's got this mission, this whole calling on Malta. Then this incredible reversal. Paul comes ashore with nothing. He's a prisoner. He's a foreigner. He's a burden. And suddenly, everything changes, and he's a blessing. And they give him everything he needs, and he leaves that place with all that he ever needed. This is the promise of God. This is the presence of God. And this is what God does in our lives. But he didn't start out by healing this whole island. He just went to the person who was right in front of him. And he loved that person right in front of him. That's the step. Paul prayed for the person right there. The crowds only came after. You don't have to set out to bless everybody. Who is it that God's put in your life? Who is it? Even in the place that you're not meant to be, even in the place that you're just disappointed at, even with the coworkers that just rub you the wrong way. I'll never forget, my mom was a principal, and she would have teachers. You can imagine all the teachers, I remember talking to a principal once. He was a high school principal, and I was talking to him because we were using his facility, and this is in South Africa, and he says, I fight every day. You know who the enemy is? I said, I didn't want to say the kids. I thought that sounds awful. I was like, he said, the teachers. The teachers, they're my biggest enemies. And I was like, yikes. But if you've been in school, if you've done anything in school, you know the politics, and it's so hard. It's very hard. But I remember my mom saying when there was a really difficult teacher, you know what I would do? I'd buy them a gift. I'd give them a gift, and suddenly they're disarmed. Like, I thought I was your enemy. No, we're on the same team. Give them a gift. It disarms them, right? Who's the person you need to give a gift to this week? That person that's just like, be a blessing to them. That one person. Who could you do that for? You may not be able to give them a gift. Maybe you could pray for them. How can I pray for you? Maybe it's healing they need. Oh, I see your foot. Can I pray for your foot? Maybe it's a ride, a meal, a skill, an afternoon, an honest word, any of those things. Who's the person in front of you? Will you be faithful with the one? Watch the blessing open up. DeShazer is in this Japanese prison cell. God completely transforms his heart for the Japanese. And he starts to treat those that were his guards differently. Their relationship shifted. It's probably why he made it through to the end. He didn't get set free until 1945 when American troops came in and set him free. But by that time, God had already gripped his heart to be a blessing to the very people that he once hated with a passion. And he went back home to Oregon, and he went to seminary. And he got his degree, and he met his wife. And he moved back to the city that he had bombed. And he became a missionary for 30 years to the very people that he tried to annihilate. He wrote a sermon. Isn't that amazing? He wrote a sermon that he turned into a tract, and it was called, the tract was called, I Was a Prisoner of War, a Japanese prisoner of war, or whatever it was. And that tract found its way to a guy named Fuchida. And that tract pointed Fuchida into the direction of Christ. And this guy, Fuchida, became a Christian. Fuchida was the commander who led the raid on Pearl Harbor. And DeShazer and Fuchida preached several times from the same stage to win the Japanese people for Jesus. That's what God does. That's our God. That's our God. And it started with him changing his perspective of where he was and what he was called to do in that place and who he was called to love. It's an incredible story. God wants to do that through your life. That's who he is. That's the whole story of Acts 29. Acts 28. Acts 29 is your story that you're going to write. There is no Acts 29. That's the next chapter in our lives. That's the church on mission. We're writing Acts 29. The island shipwrecked Paul became the island that Paul healed. Isn't that incredible? You know, it's the story of the gospel itself. Because Jesus went to a place that he was never supposed to be. Onto a cross that you were supposed to be on. That I was supposed to be on. He literally gathered the sticks of those crosses. The stick that went this way vertically and the stick that went horizontally. He took that stick and he gathered it and he put it on his shoulder. That's what Jesus did. That's how humble your God is. He gathered his sticks and put it there. And then gripped with the promise of resurrection. Despite everybody he knew turning on him. The crowd and all of his friends. Everybody turned on him. But he had a grip on his life. It was the grip of resurrection. Even though heaven went silent, he knew it wasn't the end of the story. He was gripped by a promise. And then he gave it away. He gave it away. He went through death. He rose again, and he gives it away to you. The life that was meant to be his is now yours. The death that was meant to be ours, he took upon himself. That's what Jesus did. That's phenomenal. That's our God. That's our Jesus. And he wants to do that in your life, even in this place where you'd never planned to be. That's what he wants to do. What could it look like? For you to gather the sticks, grip a promise, and start to give it away. Everything could change. Lord, right now I pray for every one of us here. Show us again what life, true life, is meant to be. Remind us again that no matter where we find ourselves, you have a plan, you have a purpose, and you want to work it out in our lives if we will be willing. I pray right now you'd find willing hearts. Help us to reframe where we are in light of your story. Help us to find grace through Paul's story, through DeShazer's story, through the story of Jesus. To say, God, let our lives reflect those lives. Thank you, Jesus. I just invite you right now, just even where you are, allow the Lord to start ministering to you. Raise your hands or put them out just to say, God, I want you. I need you to help me. I need you to do these things. This isn't something that we do on our own strength. This is something that we say, God, I want to do these things, and the Lord comes and gives us his strength by the Holy Spirit. Come right now. Bring strength to those that need to gather sticks again. Bring strength to those that need to grip a promise again. Give strength to those that need to continue to give away, even though they feel out, they feel drained, they feel finished. But Lord, there's more to give, because you never run out of resources. You never run out of strength, and you never run out of the grace that we need. Let them feel it right now. Fill them again. Your presence, in the name of Jesus. Amen.